Hello everybody, Andy here, and today we are going to be looking at the balanced data slate for Q3 2023, Kill Team Warhammer 40k. So this is the second balanced data slate for Q3 2023. So that's an interesting one, isn't it? Why might that be? Let's go through. So the article calls out, there's an article to go along with the balanced data slate, and it calls out Chaos Cults, Ravagers, Inquisition, Hearthkyn, Pathfinders and Gellerpox, and they've all been touched upon. The article doesn't mention Warp, Coven, Elicidian Starstriders and Exaction Squad, but that's because those buffs have already happened, because this is the second Q3 balanced data slate, and they happened in the first Q3 balanced data slate. That makes sense, right? Sure, okay. Why? Good question. I think it's, I'm assuming it's because this is those buffs have already happened, and so I think they've done it because this is considered an emergency balance patch for the quarter, and so they've just counted it as happening in the same patch, and so not needing to separate the stars out. Or they're just like spelling and grammar updates. For example, I know the Elicidian Starstriders have had a grammar update, whereas I think the Exaction Squad and Warp Coven are just the same. There you go. So there you go. Now, as we go through the buffs, I would point out that the Exaction Squad, although having a new patch, have not had an additional buff, which might seem odd, but also, as this is an emergency patch, it kind of makes sense because there hasn't been time for the previous balanced data slate, which is the same balanced data slate, to show any effect. And also, it's good to see that Gellerpox and Cults, two teams with the most models and a 5-up Feel No Pain, have been touched upon, as we know. Are they going to tackle those two obvious issues or nerf them in other ways? Inquisition, of course, have a preponderance of AP weapons and are generally too good compared to taking the auxiliary teams by themselves. Are they going to touch those? Pathfinders, we can kind of weirdly assume a buff, right? But who knows what. Hearthkyn, I'm actually most excited about how they're going to pick them up off the floor. Yeah, that probably was some kind of height short king joke. Just imagine it was funnier. All right, you know what? Let's start with the Chaos Cults, because of course we absolutely have to know, right? Like, this is the interesting one. What are they going to do? It's been dominating the meta. Finally, we can stop talking about it. Finally, we've all managed to get in our videos where we call them OP, so that we can now start making videos where we say, oh, buff Chaos Cults, right? Right, so first up, we have the Icon Arc first, and instead of giving out automatic auras, you have to spend an AP to turn your aura on, and damage reduction to a minimum of 3 instead of 2, in line with the rest of the game. That makes total sense. It's a good fix, probably where it should have been all along, I suspect. We're going to have to wait to see how that plays out. It's still strong. It's now presumably not broken, I would guess. But we shall see, right? It's still good. Yep, Mutant and Torments. Feel No Pains changed to 6s instead of 5s. That's good. I like it. Personally, I quite like the idea of fixed damage reduction as a concept. But changing this to 6s is kind of good enough. It halves the effect of their Feel No Pains. Yeah, good. I like it. It now gives you more of a chance to actually kill them, and your opponent has to roll really, really hot. I've played Death Guard enough that 5-up Feel No Pains I know are too strong. But 6-ups? You don't get too many 6s, So good enough. Good enough. Sickening Aura used to also be procced off the Dark Commune models, but no longer. That's fine. It's a nerf. Cool. I don't know if it's a nerf they needed, but whatever. And the Mutants changed Relentless for Ceaseless. This means the big torments still have Relentless, do note, but this is a nice change in line with the theme, of every time you mutate, you go up, like a skill level, essentially. And also won't allow the Mutants now to auto-win against 7-wound models, which was always a little bit frustrating because of just how good Relentless is. Rerolls are always the best option. Lame, but cool. That's dice, baby. However, there's no change to how many torments you'll have on the board, which is kind of an issue, or the issue, arguably. Cults certainly won't have swung to being never used, I would say. That's for sure. They're still strong. However, as we know, a lot of comp players see a nerf, have had their fun, gained their ICT points, and so will most likely move on. So I would suspect to see the Colts win rate drop more than they really deserve just from this nerf. Still strong though, nice changes, we shall see. However, I would like to give a quick subscriber-only benefit, and that is a big double hello. Such wholesome very wow. If you want to qualify for that double hello in the next video, like, subscribe, leave a comment, all that great stuff. For the comment, let me know if the nerfs and buffs have been enough. That's an easy comment, right? Oh, and if you really like the vibes, consider supporting me on Patreon. You get a cool coloured name in my Discord, access to a members only area there too, and at certain tiers you get digital goodies like data cards, templates, and my objective marker files to print out for yourself, as well as channel updates and extra unboxings on occasion, etc, etc. Also, I've started my Vantage Point podcast again, which is hype, well done me. That can be found on, kind of all the regular podcast apps just by searching for Vantage Point Kill Team. I stream them live on Twitch, and if you want to see video, that's on YouTube for patrons only. Cool. Okay. While we're down here in the balanced data state, let's go to the Fellgor, right? They are interesting. Here we go. So, they can be killed with a crit in shooting. Boom. And when frenzied, they cannot hold objectives. Team nerfed, essentially to oblivion. Yeah. Right? What do these guys even do now? I don't think anybody knows what the Fellgor do outside of frenzying. And now that you can't hold objectives and you die in shooting, what does the team do? Luckily, I've never liked the theme of the team, so I don't care. But some people are probably going to be quite upset here, I suspect. I think that these are two good changes to the mechanic of frenzy, and I suspect the team might need a buff to balance this change out, but now, but not to frenzy. Like, they've done the correct thing to frenzy, but yeah, probably buff the rest of the team. So still on this final page, let's have a look at Inquisitorial Agents. So you can only take 2 AP2 weapons from the auxiliary support. Before, I think it was possible to end up with 5 AP2 weapons or something insane. Maybe even 6. And basically, you could table Intercession even without them failing an armor save sort of thing. Yeah, a little bit broke, let's be honest. Then the Interrogator and Tome Skull become GA2 with each other. I like this. They're the 2 models you have to take. They work with each other, makes total sense. Cool. Absolute Authority, the big scary ploy blocker, now can't be used on the same ploy more than once, or if the ploy cost no CP. A nice compromise, I think. Only block, you can only block that just to scratch once sort of thing. Although, I suppose when it comes to something like Into the Breach or it can only be used once. You'd only block it once. Although I'm not sure you can block those, but that's not the point. Also, kind of coming over from how Shatterpoint does it, I think there should be a definition of whether or not a 0 CP ploy actually has a ploy cost. For example, if its cost is 0, then it should be able to be increased. If it's free, then it's always free. So it would be written as a dash instead of a 0 on the cost sort of thing. I don't know, it's fine. Just something to consider for the next edition maybe. But still, this makes sense. So I'm going to quickly zoom up to Gellerpox, because they were another big baddie. Big bad. So, and I'm sure that Hearthkyn are going to be buffs, so we've finished that kind of on a high. That's another short joke. You're welcome. Right, Rust Emanations now only comes from your 3 big Nightmare Hulks. Do note that your leader, Volgar, is not a Nightmare Hulk, probably an oversight, but it is very clear in the raw there. This makes sense. No more hiding your Nurglings all over the place to hardcore nerf the enemy shooting without having to engage. Cool. Is that enough? Is that what Gellerpox needed? Pass. Pass. Probably needed a little bit more than that. It's fine. Okay, alright, Hearthkyn. So, I'm pretty hyped. Let's see what they've done. So, they've got, we already knew the first bullet point, we're only reading the new ones. So, they've got +1 wound. Absolutely mandatory. I was talking about this on my Vantage Point podcast just the other day, about how 10 model teams cannot be 7 wounds. The whole game is beyond that. Yeah, there you go. We have never had a successful 7 wound 10 model team. apart from novitiates, which I discuss why on the podcast. Field Medic gets lethal 5-up on his plasma knife. Seems weird, except for the next bullet point is that the equipment of a plasma knife gains lethal 5-up. So, I'm going to wait to the end to kind of talk about that. We'll go through the rest of the other point here first. The Thane, your leader, has Eye of the Ancestor. This used to be give out 1 grudge token to a visible enemy model when this model activates. Now, it's used in place of a strat ploy. It doesn't require visibility, and if 3 of your guys have died, 3 or more, have died, you can give out 2 a turn. So, yep, this is just a straight up buff, obviously in multiple ways for Eye of the Ancestor. Because you can give out more tokens, which is obviously good, but also it moves it to a strat ploy, means you don't have to prioritize the leader activating first or needing visibility. Really good buff, I like it. Also just kind of a quality of life improvement over how that works, so good. Now the lethal 5-up on your plasma knives, while nice, like, you know, buff's a buff, right, is very much not needed. Because the whole point of your faction ability being a grudge is that you get auto crits. I would have much rather seen plasma knives change to be 3-up to hit. Hitting on 4s is really rough. However, I would have also accepted, possibly even better actually, would have been still hitting on 4s, but you get an extra attack dice. Finally, Pathfinders, where they're like all the way at the top, because they've been good for so long. Where are they at? Here we go. Pathfinders. What have they got? Right. Here we go. Finally, Pathfinders. You might not be aware, but Pathfinders have 2 abilities when they do their Art of War. 2, right? So the one you know that is the only one ever used, Montcar, is a free dash in their activation. The other one is Cao Yon, which is retain an additional dice when in cover. Cao Yon has now been buffed to also allow them to perform a mission action or pickup action for 1 less AP. This is very interesting as buff. It's a good buff, but the free dash is so strong, we definitely have to see how this pans out. And then they've been buffed specifically in close quarters, which I believe is our first ever buff because you suck in close quarters, right? They've never done a close quarters only thing before. You can perform the guard action while on a conceal order, but if you do, you can only use the Marker Light ability. So that's a very interesting buff, and note that Marker Light only requires visibility, so no stopping the guard action with non-reciprocal shooting, which is really good. You'll actually be able to use Marker Lights on ITD now. So I suppose the only thing to kind of note there is... So really, that's just a nerf to non-reciprocal shooting, but like, good it should be, because non-reciprocal shooting, I believe, clearly does not work as intended. Like, it's part of the mechanics, but it was never intended, it was never designed that way, and it's just a thing they have then worked around since on Into the Dark. Certainly, it kind of makes guard pointless. Anyway, whatever, that's a whole other video. So this is good to see. And that's all the changes. Do we have final thoughts? Do we have any thoughts, mate? Lol, obviously not. All good changes, kind of all needed. Let's have a quick rumination upon internal balance, however. Harkening back to my little read there on Fellgor, I would like to start seeing a bit of a nerf sandwich where it's needed. Don't be afraid to swing a team, right? So that's definitely the wrong term, swing. But you know, Frenzy isn't what it should be, okay? But the removal of it without a buff elsewhere seems pretty harsh, because without that, what does the team even do? I legit don't know. They hit stuff not particularly well in melee. That's it. So team's dead. They needed melee. They needed Frenzy nerfed 100%, and they've made some great changes to Frenzy. It's still a good ability, but it means now all you can do is charge and fight, and if you get crit, you're done. But also there's counterplay because now you can be shot. So really good change, but team's dead. Needed a buff elsewhere. I've completely lost my place. Likewise, I really like the buff to Cao Yon. I'd love to see more internal balance being touched upon. Obviously, this is much more of an issue like in 40k, if you want an example, where whole swaths of a codex just don't get used. But to a smaller degree, we do see the same in Kill Team. So this buff to an unused ability is really good. And likewise, on the internal balance thingy, the plasma knives going to lethal 5 up is cool, but I really can't see anyone taking the dozer now. So yes, the dozer is primarily a tech piece, not a melee powerhouse, but to buff overall melee, but not the specific melee guy, does ultimately nerf him. And that's kind of it. Yeah, cool. All right, well, if you made it to the end of the video, I'd like to give you a big triple hello. Wow, wasn't that intensely wholesome? I'm sorry if that was too wholesome for you, in fact. Guys, it was great to see this emergency balance patch. Obviously, if I didn't say it earlier, and I didn't, because I remember, it's great that they've taken action outside of their usual balance patch window. So this is really good. Great sign of GW supporting the game. Being willing to support the game is more what I mean there. We know they support the game, right? we buy it, or we try to. So we know they support it, but great to see them do something out of routine when they know they need to step in. So that's awesome to see. Anything else? No, that's about it, I guess. So don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you really like what I'm doing here, consider checking me out on Patreon. Okay. Have a good one, guys. Bye.